We'll go ahead and kick off as John is getting ready, and then we'll be ready to introduce him in just a bit. Well, first of all, thanks everyone for being here. My name is David Knight. I'm the Executive Director for CalCAPA for the ones that I haven't met. Looks like a lot of familiar folks on the call. So thanks to Lauren Tyner, our Director of Training and Technical Assistance. Him and Katrina have put together this innovation. Make sure I get the correct title. We are Innovation for Impact. Is that, was I close? All right.
That's right, winner.
Yeah. And so if a lot of you remember, a lot of your newer executive directors in our area. And then we did a series last year of 6 different trainings where it was, what would I need to know, or what would I like to have known as a new director? And this year it's around the Innovation for Impact. And we brought in other folks that, are all leadership levels. So Lewis, yes, please stay. This is for all leadership levels, and we've expanded that. And one of the recommendations out of that committee from previous to give people an opportunity to learn more about different opportunities from different folks in that area. So I do advise if everybody will take a second and in the interest of time, overall, introduce yourself in the chat. If you just throw your name, what agency you're with, so everybody can kind of get to know each other. I do have the privilege, excuse me. John, I think I see you on. Can you hear us and see us?
I can definitely hear you. I'm not going to go on camera because my Wi-Fi here at the hotel I'm at a conference is not the best. So I do apologize. I hate to talk to a group and not be on camera. So I'm really sorry about that. But I'm nervous if I go back on camera, I will get disconnected.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And thanks for being here. John is in the middle of a conference and still was willing to do this and talk to us. I had the privilege of meeting John. Man, it's been about a year now that we've known each other at one of our national conferences. And we just had a chance to talk and share ideas. And one of the things that you will notice real quickly is John's eagerness and his ability to lean in. For you that don't know him, John is the Chief Expansion Officer, which I think is one of the coolest titles out there to have in an agency. And he is at the Community and Economic Development Association of Cook County. So he's extremely instrumental in orchestrating all their strategic initiatives aimed at geographical, product, and program expansion. Really focuses on them fostering growth and then delivering value for both the short and long term. So John and I had a lengthy discussion about all the different ideas in the model in which he's been able to really be innovative and to go out and look at different funding streams. And so when Lauren said, hey, we're looking for an individual to come in and really bring in new ideas to California, I said, I've got a really good guy that just always blows me off my feet every time we have a conversation. So John is ultimately, his goal is to lead the strategic problem solving efforts for his area. He always makes sure they're aligned with the mission and vision, and having the ability to really do that is just an exceptional opportunity. So I wanted him to hop on with us today and share some of those thoughts and the model in which he did that, and then be able to share some of those funding streams that occur because of the model in which he does that. So I want to welcome everybody. I want to give a special shout out to our board chair, Mary Alice is on. Thanks for being here. She leads our team on the state association. So thanks for being here. Thanks for everybody being on the call. John's going to focus in on what his skill really is and where he focuses around how to do the budget management, project leadership, team building, all those, that brand development and the way it works and what it's really allowed him to have that relentless pursuit of excellence in building that funding. So without further ado, John, nobody came to hear me talk, so I want to turn it over to you. So thanks for being here. Thanks for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you. Please, as it goes along, if you'll throw questions in the chat, we'll try to get to many questions as much time as he can give us. So John, without further ado, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, David. And David was way over generous with the introduction and my skill sets. Just briefly a little bit about myself. I come from a very economically challenged background. And so really the work that we do collectively as community action is really at the heart of what I believe in. And I believe we need to focus and understand the systemic issues and policies that create, a lot of problems for BIPOC individuals. And you know, individuals that don't just, you know, normally or holistically fit into what we deem as society. So I was very fortunate enough, and you'll hear me refer to a lot to equity during this. It's really important to me. It's a way in which I live my life and conduct my business. And I do wholeheartedly believe, growing up in a 99% predominant African-American community as a white male, I was given an opportunity to join the Carpenters Union right out of high school when I was 18 years old. And interestingly enough, at the time when that occurred, I was young and just trying to figure out my own life. And I really didn't have the opportunity to understand what was really happening around me, around racism and the intentional oppression of Black and brown people, which I believe is done systemically throughout our political infrastructure. And so I'm very involved nationally in politics and really fighting for racial equity, and is creating a sense of belonging for our communities, our constituents, and the people that we serve. So once again, very fortunate to get into the union at a very young age. Went to school at night while I was in the union. Was smart enough and lucky enough to get myself an engineering education. I moved into owning my own engineering company for a while, and then I moved into community action, and it's the most fulfilling, greatest feeling, passion that I've ever had in my entire life. I wake up every day unbelievably energized and excited to make decisions that I know are going to change people's lives. And if they don't, those decisions are not only made to change the people's lives of the people that we serve, but opportunities like these to come into a network of established, esteemed, educated colleagues who really have a lot to offer. So I'm really hoping that this can be a super engaging and impactful conversation. I'm not here to tell people what to do, but I'm hoping that I'm here to make people think differently, right? As individuals, we tend to be able to see 180 degrees, right? And so that's human. We're all human. And so, you know, what are the mechanisms, or what are the teams, or the mentors that are around us that help us see past that 180 degrees? Because we can't do it independently, but we can do it interdependently. And so, you know, and I say a lot of these things, right? It sounds like I'm doing a leadership conference, not how to create unrestricted funding, but there's a lead into that. I did share a document with David, and not sure if it was pushed out to everybody. It's a high level kind of synopsis of what I believe to be kind of the steps that have to happen. One, is your organization and your team ready and healthy enough to even go down this path? And you know, how do you figure those things out? And I laid out some of that information, you know, at a high level. Happy to connect with folks post this discussion if they wanted to understand more. But you know, really, what are the tools and resources we have to understand where's our agency at? And when I started at CETA, I was very fortunate that I came in with the CEO, who I had worked for a couple years at a different organization. And CETA is a fairly large community action agency. We go back and forth annually of being either between the first and third largest, based on who might get some additional or ancillary funding. And we serve over 300,000, you know, families a year. So we are unique in the respect that we are very large, and so we might have a lot of other resources. But I feel that it doesn't matter what your size or what your annual revenue is. The principles of, are we ready to move into the next phase in our organization, apply linearly. The way that we go about that analysis through SWOT or SOAR or PEST, and how do we understand those mechanisms and those resources, and then pool them together to say, hey, you know, this is where we're really strong, this is where we're really weak, and how do we get better where we're weak, and how do we leverage where we're really strong, right? So that's some of the work that I did along with my team, and all due credit to my team. They did most of the work. I'm the 500,000 foot guy. I'm not very detail oriented. As you can tell, I'm probably all over the place in this conversation, but my predictive index supports that. So I feel comfortable being kind of chaotic and all over. And so when we delve into this information, right, that's what we learned. Here's where we need to improve. And over time we improved. And now 10 years later, that's how long I've been with the organization. I started out as the director of weatherization and was fortunate enough to move into the C-suite and really become part of the executive leadership team. And, you know, we've really leveraged where we're strong. What tells us we're strong? First and foremost, what is our culture? You can't get outside of what you do daily and look for these other ancillary opportunities to create unrestricted funding if home isn't good, right? Like you can't walk out the door in the morning when your home is messed up and expect to not and expect for things to not go well for you when you're at work. Because no matter how hard we try, they say, oh, I leave work at home. No, you never leave work at home because you're the same person, you're the same individual, and you can't do that. And so everything has to really be firing what I like to call home as far as relating to our organization. The people that we work with, our teams have to be number one when we start to look at, how are we going to pursue different avenues? How are we going to expand? How are we going to innovate and create unrestricted funding? Because the bottom line is you're going to lean on those folks because as what I've learned, and I don't, being at the executive level now and being much further away from the daily operations of the weatherization program, which was kind of my area of expertise, I wasn't that embedded in our other programs. So now when I come up with chaotic ideas, I'm relying on other directors or other supervisors or other managers to take on more than what their job description says, right? Our last bullet point in all of our job descriptions is other duties as assigned. And so when you're asking somebody to do that, and maybe you can't compensate them right at that point in time, you have to be able to be a good, strong leader and create interdependency and be I like to call it a servant leader. That's my leadership style. And what that does is it garners empathy, trust and authenticity, and that's huge for empowerment. And when people feel empowered, they are willing to go a little bit above and beyond. And by incorporating them into these crazy ideas and getting these solutions from those who are closest to the problems, we tend to be a lot more successful in that capacity. So what we were able to do, once again, is look out and say, we're good at fiscal operations. We are good at program implementation. And what are some of the areas within those things that we do daily? How do we leverage our talent? One of the things that we've done in Illinois is through the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. I was able to look at our weatherization process and team, and we create unrestricted funding by partnering with our utilities, both from a cost sharing split perspective and from for-profit weatherization. And so we were able to leverage our internal assets in two different mediums within the energy efficiency space to create opportunities for unrestricted funding. So through those two efforts alone, we create about $1.8 to $2.3 million annually in unrestricted revenue, and that's net unrestricted, not gross. So that's a huge area of opportunity for us because, as executive directors and you're looking out and leaning in, we have our traditional methods of getting private donors or we get with foundations, and that's to me, that's not sustainable. Unless you just have a bunch of multimillionaires in your area who are guaranteeing they're going to give you millions of dollars a year, right? It's not, it wouldn't be my game plan if I was trying to win a Super Bowl. But nonetheless, we also, we have been able to successfully create consulting arms of our organization based on, once again, where we're strong. An example is we're very strong in multifamily energy efficiency, and that not just related to WAP weatherization work. We have engineers on our team, and so we've been able to sign contracts with some other state to implement their bill funding in multifamily, because some of those states don't even do multifamily, but their agencies that focus on single family don't have that capacity, right? But they have to figure out how to get those funds spent. So that's something that we've done. We've been able to leverage a lot of our internal talent. And this is where we talk about the relationship building, understanding our team dynamics, their lived experience. We created what's called affordable housing options, and it's a for-profit LLC, and we're doing affordable housing with that team. So, these are many of the different mechanisms that we've looked internally and done a lot of these analyses and said, these are areas that we're really good at. Our auditors, our audit reports say we're good at this. We never have, findings from our state visits. Like we know we're doing this stuff well. When we had organizational assessments done from external third-party vendors, and we've even enhanced through those mediums to make ourselves better. And now we also do a lot. We work with a lot of agencies in Illinois and some outside of Illinois, where they may have an individualized program, or we'll look at them at the organizational level, like through the lens of a consultant, and say, hey, they'll come in and say, we don't have any standard operating procedure. So we'll work with their LIHEAP group or their CSBG team or their weatherization group, and we'll walk through their process with them, and then we'll help them create standard operating procedures and work, you know, and flow and workflows. Because when we get structured, we automatically create efficiencies. And when we create efficiencies, we create time. And now, once again, when we go back to understanding how to utilize our strengths, if we free up our team and our time and we can use them because they're multifaceted through their talents, then we can pay them more through these other mediums as well. So, you know, the process really ties back to culture, retention, opportunity, and innovation, right? And so that's kind of like how we've really, at a high level, gone through our process at our organization and identified how do we push outside of just accepting our formula grants every year and being happy with the work that we do. So I'll pause there. I just said a ton. and just let anybody open fire. I'm happy to do my best to answer any questions.
John, I'll start with some of the questions that were submitted ahead of time. And you know, obviously, everybody on here is a CSBG agent, community action agent, just like yourself. And you touched on the idea, one of the conversations that have been throughout the network. I'm just trying to frame the question a little bit. Is that, you know, we're in the 60th year of community action, and we're supposed to be about innovation. You hit on you know, understanding your culture and then understanding what you're good at, you know, and then being able to use what you've learned with the current funding that you have now. How do you also, or how have you leveraged that by also ensuring that you increase those collaborative partnerships with other folks, whether it's in the communities that you serve, and I know you mentioned some statewide. What was that process like of understanding where the other gaps were outside of your agency that you knew your strengths matched? What did you have kind of a process to start meeting with those folks within your community to realize where, you know, if people have a need, they'll eventually find the money to meet that need. So how did you go through that process to figure that out?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think for everybody on the call, right, some of that baseline data it's in our community needs assessment, right? So we start to identify what are the needs in our community. And as organizations, we don't have the resources to fill every gap. And so then what you have to do is understand within your service territory, who are the people that do the things that you don't do? And are they doing them well, right? So that was a big part of when, you know, when we started to identify that crime was, you know, a real issue, because Chicago is part of our service territory and the suburban Cook County area, we knew that we didn't internally have subject matter experts in crime prevention programs, right? So our attempt at starting to combat crime was by engaging more in youth programming and finding partners that serve youth, right? I mean, we can't build a house by starting with the roof, right? So we have to start at the foundation. And if we can change the mindset and the opportunities for the emerging leaders within our communities, then we can organically start to combat crime. For addressing some of the other areas that for like 18 to 24, that, or even like 13 to 18, we reached out. We looked for the organizations that were working within the Illinois juvenile system and people that were already getting funding, and then reaching out to the funding sources to understand, like, look, we're looking for these partnerships. And so we created what we call a community engagement MOU. And so it's a very kind of specific MOU that means when it's not a contract, right? We all know MOUs are not legally binding, but nonetheless, it brings accountability to wanting to be focused on each other's mission. I keep using that term interdependent, right? And to level set, we talk about being collaborative, right? So collaboration means you want to work together to achieve a task, but being interdependent means you can't achieve that task without working together. And so we've really shifted our mindset to, we want interdependent relationships. Collaboration is great, but collaboration lacks accountability. So we want people who are vested in doing what we're doing, and that's who we want to build partnerships with. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, the second question we got was kind of where the board's role, and how do you leverage your board's expertise and their involvement into helping you maximize funding opportunities and specifically around, is a big part of it educating the board about what skill sets you have that could be, marketable, understanding more about what the agency does well, or, how do you use that process? How do you build them in as the community members that you serve?
Yeah, I think that I'm gonna, I'm a very transparent person. So I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say it's very difficult to get high level outputs from your board when they tend to only engage with you 20 to 30 hours a year. So for those of you that have board members that are on their own outside of your normal board meetings, going out of their way to engage, that's great. We have some of those board members at CETA, but then we have some that, I feel like personally they're there to check some box because that's where they're supposed to be. So we do have a couple of our board members who are unbelievable community-based advocates, and they bring partnerships together, especially on our personnel planning and evaluation committee for our board, which is the kind of the piece of the board that I engage with very heavily because I'm over all of our programs. That team is really great about their social capital and bringing opportunity to the table. I meet with them every 2 weeks. There's 6 of them. We have about a 30 to 45-minute brainstorm session. We all agree on one topic. We talk about that topic. I'm the one that takes the notes. I memorialize it. I push it out to them, and then we create some strategic initiatives from that that are program related and related to building organizational capacity and community capacity.
Last one that somebody just sent right now, and then I want to definitely open it up to the floor. I don't want to take it all here. Is you mentioned the 1.8 that you're netting. Could you explain a little bit more about that program?
About which one? I'm sorry.
When you mentioned that there was you have a certain process now that's netting 1.8 million in restricted funds. Yeah.
So that program is through our weatherization department, and it's in conjunction with our electric and gas utilities. So what ends up happening is we will do when we're doing our jobs, right, our energy audits and our quality control inspections, the state has this through CEJA has this agreement with the utilities where they do 50% cost share. So if a job is $10,000, our grant funds will pay for 50%, and the utility companies pay for 50% of that project cost. Well, the more efficient we operate that 50% of that job cost that the utilities pay for is unrestricted funding. So the leaner our process is, right, we have to do true cost allocation of the time of a staff person, to go do that audit or follow through with those principles as it relates to that compliance. But then we are able to generate unrestricted funding. And then, as I mentioned, we have another portion that it is above and beyond the 200% of poverty that we serve weatherization clients from about 200% of poverty, which I think is about 50 to 60% of AMI, up to 80% of AMI. And right, it's we operate that program very efficiently and effectively. And so that also generates true unrestricted funding. And so the bulk of our unrestricted revenue comes from that medium. And there's a sunset on that, right? Because in Illinois, the Climate Equitable Jobs Act is a 15-year act. And so I'm sure that the utilities, because they were, forced to do this by ICC in order to get their rate hikes, they'll probably won't continue that program. So I have to find other mediums and ways to offset the loss of that income in another 8 years when it happens.
Okay, thanks. Another question was about non-related business income, but it looks like you've asked that in that response as well. So
yeah, and that's interesting, that particular question, David. And you are allowed to generate revenue, right, as a 501c3. I don't know the exact allowance from a percentage basis. If you're 200 million, they don't want you generating 180 million in net positive cash, right? So, but in doing the work that we do, it's still tied back to like our mission, our core mission of what we are as a community action agency, which is a big part of when you're generating that unrestricted or unrelated business income, you're still following the core mission of your organization. And I'm not our CFO for the record, but happy to push some questions toward him if that would be helpful.
Well, we've got a few more, but I want to open it up to the floor to make sure that we have plenty of time for people. So if you want to raise your hand, Lewis, I see your hand up.
Thanks, David. Very much appreciate this, John. So just real quick to go a little bit further on that response you gave about the program you're just describing with in collaboration with your utilities. So I'm assuming for your billing, you're billing out per components of the weatherization projects according to an agreed upon time frame for each component, as opposed to it being tied back to a functional timesheet.
Yes. So what we do is we use ADP as our reporting system. So the way we broke down time on task, right? So if an energy auditor is out in the field for 4 hours, hypothetically, right, doing their data collection, when they come into the office, they will put 2 hours of their time in ADP and charge it to that grant. And then we have an account allocation code for the unrestricted revenue mechanism. So they would charge some of that time to that. Through our auditors, CapLaw, and our state, they came up with a basis for, like your overhead, maintenance, space allocation. It's basically like a percentage. I don't remember that off the top of my head, and I apologize, but they use a basis for, what percentage of gas, vehicle insurance, those types of things would then be allocated to ensure the equity in the grant isn't paying for more than it really should be based on the opportunity to create unrestricted funding. And outside of the grant, and that 200% or above, we bought all the vehicles and equipment with unrestricted revenue. We don't rent back from the grant or do anything like that.
Thank you.
To share, I see you had your hand up a minute ago.
Yeah, I did. I try to raise it and then bring it down really quick. Thank you, John, for being here and speaking with us. I just had a question about, you made mention of when we get structured, we automatically get efficient or become efficient. And so I was just curious, how long did it take for the kind of paradigm shift of your organization and getting to that structured place where you were like, okay, now we're efficient, now we're right on track?
So I started in September of 2014. We went after our first unrestricted business venture in 2018, right? So it took us about 4 years to really go through the change management process. And, even as of today, we're still working on culture shift. We worked with some consultants to do an organizational culture index assessment to understand, culture is not what the executive team thinks it is, right? The culture is, what do the people who walk through the door every day that are doing the work feel like the culture is? And, that's a top-down mentality when you look at it the other way, and it's command and control. And you have to get away from that if you're an organization that's thinking that way. Some stuff has to be top-down in order to maintain the structure, but you've got to find a comprehensive, inclusive way to go about gathering the data to make that driven decision.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
John, do you have any examples of what are some of the duplication that you saw during that process that you guys were able to eliminate?
Yeah, well, we had to work with our funders a lot on what they could control. We know legislatively, right? You can't change statute. How many times we hear that from our funders? I think it's a cop out personally, because there was, before statute, someone had to build the program, but they know our federal partners lots of times don't want to fight that fight. But what we had found is, when you have to get a client's signature 17 times on 17 different documents, that to me doesn't make any sense. So we went to like a universal signature page. And so that created huge efficiencies for us. We actually did a time on task analysis where literally one of the people on the change management team would sit with each people throughout a process and literally use a stopwatch and time how long it took to do something. And so it was basically like, how many seconds did this take? And so we were figuring out like, what now, based on the process flow chart, what do we change, or what do we add or remove? And so, you know, it's hard to pinpoint because I don't have all of the data right in front of me, but those are some of the actions and the steps that we took. You know, why does the same piece of data in whatever system have to be re-entered 5 times, right? Why can't we get an enhanced system and utilize, you know, building intelligence built into a CRM or into some reporting system that automatically moves that data versus having to manually continuously move the same data over and over? That does 2 things, right? One, it gives that person a lot more time because they're not entering that same data 17 times, but also reduces the opportunity for mistakes because we're human, right? If we have to manually enter data over and over and over, I just law of averages, there's going to be a mistake, and who knows what that mistake might be. It could be a date that means a job becomes a disallowed cost because it was prior weatherization, or it could be a miscalculation on moving the properly initially calculated income for a LIHEAP benefit or eligibility for CSBG, right? So it's not just about it creates other, right? Those efficiencies create other efficiencies, which then enhance your operational functionality and get better audits, and your team's less stressed, to be frank, right? When you do all of these things and we think about we're human, right? Everything we do is humanized, and we dehumanize it by all these inadequacies, and some of it we can't do anything about, right? There's some, you know, 1983, we haven't changed much since the CSBG Act started, but that's just where we are. And I'm not CSBG subject matter expert, but I look at when we do stuff at our organization, and it's crazy to me. And so, you know, I'm only like a year and a half new as being the chief program officer. And so I'm really delving in even further now along some of these other programs to kind of do some of these other processes.
Other questions out there now?
I would like to ask a quick question, David. I guess I'm just kind of curious because you're in Chicago, right? In Illinois?
Correct.
So I'm wondering what because we operate a weatherization program, and so there's a lot of statute the way we have to operate it, and we can't really make money off of it. I mean, we can be efficient and we probably could help more individuals, but to say that for like a for-profit to make some money, we wouldn't really be able to do that. We do use other lines because we're a little bit more, we also run a conservation corps. So we do compete and we run Caltrans crews because we're used to that kind of work because of the work we have. And so we probably make $500,000 every year on that.
That's awesome.
And I guess the question that I would ask, and looking at how coming up with the tool that helps us assess those things we do really great, and sometimes, you know, you can't make money off of them and sometimes you can. I guess I'm just kind of curious how you're able to get around the Illinois piece, and it might be because you're able to contract also with Southern Cal or wherever your electric companies are. Because I know many of the other organizations do weatherization, and they may do some of those other contracts where they can make dollars.
Yeah, so we do contract directly with our gas utilities through their implementer. So
Right.
they have one implementer that implements their energy efficiency programs, and then, you know, we respond to RFPs and we get engaged and involved, you know, that way. And we do some workforce initiatives, and some of the training that we do on our workforce initiatives they're for profit, right? So we use our own money to buy the props, buy the equipment. You know, we are very separated, to your point, from using grant paid for assets. We don't do it, even though it is allowable as long as you pay a rental fee, but we're not even trying to get into the chaos of trying to figure out what's fair market rate, because your grant funder is going to have a whole different concept of fair market rate than you are when you're trying to drive a profit, right? So I think that's important to understand.
So have you created business plans for all those business lines that you have?
Yes, yep. The utility stuff, we created a 10-page business plan. We had to present it to the board, and then the board has to approve it. Well, first we create it, and we always work with our state. We have a really good relationship with our state, so we're very transparent about everything that we do. We get their feedback on it, and then we go to our board for approval. That might be the inverse of what most people think they should do, but I'm an inverse kind of guy.
Thank you, John, for sharing.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
appreciate your energy.
Oh, thank you.
I finally found somebody that talks faster than me.
John, more on the CSBG, do you guys have any specific examples where you've tested out different possible new programming with CSBG, and then we're able to roll that in to, you know, a much larger grant or for profit or anything? Have you guys invested in any of that type of structure once you found out, you know, something you were really good at, maybe a community service that you were offering?
Yeah, so we have, I created a program, we call it, it's called the Green Generation. It's G2 program. And so there is an outside and for-profit entity and another non-governmental organization. The three of us came together and we created this youth workforce program. It takes place over 8 weeks over the summer, and it happens, it's 3 consecutive years. So they're engaged for three consecutive summers in the program for 8 weeks each summer, and it focuses on sustainability, leadership, excuse me, and advocacy. And so for us, those are the 3 pillars that really, you know, drive emerging leaders to grow, to be able to communicate more effectively, kind of understand how to find their place and way in the world as they embark either into the job market or into college. We have had an unbelievable amount of success with that program. And another organization in Illinois wanted to implement that program. And so our team and our partners were able to implement that for profit because it wasn't paid for through grant funds. It was paid through some other funding from a different school district that wanted us to do it. And the program that we implemented initially, and today now is started out as a pilot program with state discretionary CSBG dollars, and now is part of our CSBG program every year. So that's like one of our bigger examples of where we used some CSBG to kind of create a larger initiative that ultimately led to a sustainable, impactful program, and we were able to leverage that outside of our organization for unrestricted funding.
And in that G2, the youth are focusing. I mean, this obviously they have the overall skills that they're gaining, but does that benefit other programs or benefit another structure? I mean, are they doing housing initiatives? Are they doing, you know, that kind of work too as well? So there's a benefit elsewhere.
Yeah, so there's a huge building science focus.
Okay.
You know, when we think about sustainability, so this group over the 3 years, they ended up getting 5 BPI certifications. And we actually had to work with BPI to lower their requirements because at the time of implementation of the program, you had to be 18 years or older to sit or challenge any BPI exam. So we worked with Larry Zarker, the CEO of BPI. He lowered those requirements, and our group of youth, which are all Black and brown individuals, are the first of their age in the country to ever challenge any BPI certification and successfully attain them.
One more question. I know one of our last conversations, we talked about how you guys kind of got into the consulting arm of consulting other folks.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that, I mean, you got to a point where you're just really good at something and then the phone starts happening. Is that where it happened? And are you, I mean, you're in a big area, you're in a big market, so there's a lot of people needing help, but is that just really it?
Well, I think it's relationship building, right? I mean, I kind of touched a little bit early in my intro that I owned a company for 7 years. And a big part of that, my ownership in that company, I was responsible for going out, building the social network, finding, you know, bidding the jobs and bringing in the money. So I naturally am very keen when I'm out at conferences or presenting it or having a discussion. I try to listen to what people are saying, right? And so it took time, you know, to build some relationships, and then, you know, the landscape can change politically, different funding comes out, and you're listening and hearing that people don't have the expertise to do this, but they want to do something. Well, that's the door that opens, right? As you know, you've got those expertise. I mean, David, you know, I see you at a lot of conferences. I'm out and about. I probably travel 15 conferences a year, and that's just bigger conferences, not stuff that I do for boards that I'm on. And that's another thing that's been very helpful. I'm on several boards, so I really get out there, and especially in the market around sustainability. So I've really got a lot of tentacles out there, not just through myself, but through my network that know what CETA does and know what we've done at CETA. And they'll be like, oh, you got to talk to John because, you know, they do consulting work and they can do this. And, you know, it's funny that the community action is big, but not really big, right? And a lot of us have the same struggles. And, you know, and so when I just never realized that so many people were struggling with wanting to do multifamily and not doing it, or struggling because they get so little weatherization funding that it's hard to maintain the workforce. And then when some era happens, or bill or IRA, now you're in this position again where you got to try and ramp up this workforce really quickly, but because it's so technical, you can't, you know, there's not an option to do that. And so, you know, how can you position, you know, any of you executive directors yourselves, you know, within your own infrastructure? Maybe you have a partner agency that, you know, you have a skill set to do. Maybe you can go do some energy audits or quality control inspections for them and charge them. We do that in Illinois. We go out and do audits and inspections for agency, and we charge them for that. You know, and our funders know that we do it, right? Because they need the work done, right? The state associations or the state offices, they need the money spent. They don't want to give it back to DOE or HHS or whoever their funder might be. And so how can you leverage, you know, what you do well once again? And, you know, yes, you're going to make some money from it. It doesn't, you know, I always say that nonprofit doesn't mean no profit, right? And our CEO is an entrepreneur. He owned several McDonald's throughout his career. He's a very successful man. And, you know, we have that same mindset of how do we turn this into funding of not government money.
Right. And one thing that I know in our conversation a year ago that was impactful for us at Cal Capo was onto that. You know, you're building relationships, you're letting people know once you've figured out what your skill set is. But it's also y'all's communication process, the way you put CETA out there, right? The way you guys talk about it, you know, through your social media. Even we took one of the pages from you guys, and it's a little bit easier for me as an association to do this, but you were saying, you know, we do this as an agency where you guys have your own blog where you're just talking about poverty. You're involving yourself in the conversation, right? Because you have a right to be there, because your organization is the poverty fighting organization. So how does that work? Or how did, you know, what made you guys decide, hey, we want to, you know, people aren't asking us to say something, we're saying it, and then we're putting it out there ourselves, versus just, you know, a lot of our advertising sometimes comes out when we want to advertise a program, right? Please come sign up for this, or don't, you know, this is out there. But you guys shifted from that. You said, well, we want to have a conversation about everything, the social part of social media, you know.
Yeah, well, I think that you hit the nail on the head in the latter part of your comment, right? Is like you made a comment that said, well, you know, we'll do that when we have this program we want people to sign up for, right? So that's and not right, wrong, or different. I'm just going to make an open-ended comment here. That's a reactive approach to something. We looked at social media as a platform to be proactive, to consistently push out what we're doing. And that reaches various different stakeholders, right? It reaches the stakeholders that need the resource. It reaches, you know, stakeholders that are interested in potentially donating funds or getting involved in supporting the eradication of poverty. It lets other people in the spaces you operate know what you're doing, right? LinkedIn is an unbelievably powerful tool. And I try to use like my personal LinkedIn, my personal Instagram and stuff to, you know, shoot short videos and of what we're doing, especially like when we're doing stuff in our training center and working, you know, with the different diverse training programs that we operate. So yeah, I think that it's the way of the future. Understanding how to leverage AI is huge. We're working through that now. I just wrote 3 pages of a code of conduct in AI ethics. And I'm, you know, we're going to be probably bringing in, you know, somebody much more educated and versed in that area of compliance around AI than I am. But, you know, it's about starting the conversation, right? We all have a passion for what we do, and how do we leverage our passion as an individual and collectively?
Well, my boss is on here, don't tell her, but I've answered OCS with AI twice. So, you know, you just type in their questions to an AI platform and it'll tell you.
I'm telling you, if you're not using AI to make your job easier, I tell you, you're crazy.
It's
I have become very efficient at utilizing AI. You know, my method is I'll type out a bunch of stuff and then you got to learn how to navigate it. You have to ask it the right questions so it doesn't lose the context of who you are. Yes, it's going to enhance your vernacular and that's great, you know, whatever. But if you're not using it, at least pilot it somehow. It saves things that used to take me days to do, write proposals or have a meeting, then handwrite all of the notes and then try and research, like, how am I going to tie all these synergies together? Man, I can do that in 45 minutes now. It's crazy.
Absolutely. So,
Don't think I didn't use AI to help me develop that document that I shared with everybody, right? I took the core principles of what we do and leveraged the information and resources that are much more abundant that I could ever create in that short of time.
absolutely. And so I'll open the floor back up. Other questions specifically, we're talking about funding streams and how the process to increase those. Other thoughts, comments, feedback?
It's nice. What's it like over there?
It's not as nice as it is over here.
We call this the slums over here.
Any other thoughts, comments?
I was interested in that thought that was happening. I just couldn't hear it.
That may be what we don't need to hear.
Hey, we need to hear everything, man. Yeah, I got to hear everything, David. Data-driven decisions.
Any other questions for John or anything else anybody thought of they wanted to bring to the table? Any other things just for the greater good?
David, would you mind just popping my email in the chat?
Yeah,
And then that way, if anybody wants to reach out to me, feel free. There was a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you're making reference to me, John, I had a question about, you mentioned that you written up some procedures or policy, and I was wondering about that. If you wrote up for like your blog and everything, when you brand, when you utilize or leverage, you look at social media as a proactive platform, I think is what you said. That's what I wrote down. So did you write out some kind of a flow before you put information or content out there that assures that you're, in checks and balancing of the information or the content that you want on your blog or in your social media platforms? Did you write something up?
Yes,
Just
there
ask
is
that.
a formal process. We have our vice president of programs and public policy also oversees our external communications group. So any of the programmatic posting that goes out is done through him.
Okay.
And so there's the director works with their given group to create whatever content they want shared. Then that goes to our VP of programs and public policy. If it's just baseline like programmatic data, he pushes it out. If it's something a little bit more advanced, then it comes to me as well to ensure that what somebody wants to put out there is in alignment, right, with our organization's values. I mean, it's always going to be aligned with our mission and vision, but it's important that when you're having external communication, that everything that you do can be tied back to your values. It's uber important. I've called so many people out on what they're putting out in social media. Then you go look up the mission, vision, values, and you're like, you're not even aligned with your own values. Why are you? And you don't ever want to be in that position in the public eye, especially from a client perspective. So it's good. They're not these like insanely robust, procedures. It's like one page that says this is the steps, right? So it's not uber complicated. But we've definitely ramped up our branding in the last year or so. We do a quarterly kind of push out to all of our partners, and it's called the Pathways of Progress. And what we do is everything. Our internal staff actually started asking a lot of questions. Like, my guess is they looked at the 990s and said, "What do you guys do for all the money you make?" Here we are in the grind every day, taking applications out in the community, and we see and so there was a lot of open dialogue from frontline managers and supervisors and the frontline team literally asking us questions like, "Well, what do you guys do? we
Mhm.
hear about these initiatives, and so we became very intentional in our pathways of progress. Really is, it's a new message from our CEO every quarter, and then we highlight like, like we had whenever we're out meeting with elected officials, who are we meeting with? What are we talking about? We memorialize that. We make sure we do some, we try to highlight something from each program and that, so other programs can see what's going on. And so, we try to do a lot of different things like that. We have an internal employee engagement committee. It's about 20 people. Now, that may seem like a lot or may not, depending on the size of your organization. We're a little north of 400 people. So, those 20 people, it's like 2 or 3 people from each program, right? So we're getting inclusive representation of the programs and the things. And so they go back to their leaders, and they're not directors that are in these committees. We intentionally choose the people that are actually making the organization successful. And not that a director doesn't, or an ED or someone in my role doesn't do that. It's our job to have the vision and hold the accountability, but it's not our job to go take an application, right? I mean, I can't personally, it'd be very mentally taxing every day to be working with folks who are just in dire straits. And maybe as a frontline team member, you're not that far away from being in dire straits. And now not only are you reminded of a situation of poverty, but how does that touch you? And so how do we ensure, that their voices are being heard and there's belonging there? And so these are different things we do to try and create the belonging.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Sorry,
John.
long answer.
And to share, I mean, when we saw that model, we brought in somebody to help and work with our staff for a little, but we did put together, and we can definitely share that with you guys, kind of a formula that puts it all out in a plan, so that makes it simpler, right? So adding a proactive communication plan, it takes work, right? It takes the time to do it. So how did we make sure that was efficient and all planned out, so that we weren't spending so much time on it? We're definitely can share you with our schedule. Jordan Cox in our office can definitely help put any of that together you'd like to, and at least give you the format. So
That'd be great.
I want to thank you, absolutely. And thank you for your time, John. We really appreciate it. Thanks for your openness, for being here. One of the reasons we wanted to have John on is to talk a lot about, looking at the structure, how we're looking at community action. It's coming both down from OCS, and then also from our state office, is how do we continue to look at ourselves as innovative and be able to expand, in a sense that we really do it all. Some of it we're really good at, some of it we're not, but using CSBG not just as programmatically reporting, but the idea that saying, oh, I have all this information, now what can I do with it? How can I expand outside of CSBG? How can I expand outside of the funding sources that I currently have? I do want to acknowledge, I believe I see Leslie Taylor on, so thanks for joining us, Leslie. Always great to have our CSBG director with us. So thanks for being here. A couple of the big things, this conversation obviously is extremely important to our next big event, which is on May 1st. There's still a little bit of room at the hotel, but May 1st is our legislative day. And so you want to make sure and be a part of that. Right after this call is our 4th call of the day. Is the legislative day. There's a legislative day kickoff. Is that correct, Lawrence? It's right, like here in like 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Our committee chair, Maria Elena, and our deputy director, Katrina, is going to be on there and just starting to talk about some of our legislative day. So we talk about building relationships, communications, getting out there. This is so vital that we're able to show that we have this ability to do this. And again, we've made no bones about it. Our goal is at some point is to help the state of California see that they need to be match funding with CSBG, so that we can be even more creative. That's our long term, not very long. It's getting shorter now. But so the legislative day is going to be extremely important. Please join us in 3 more minutes on the next call if you're just really enjoying our faces. But tons of things coming up. Don't forget, we're going to be on the Capitol grounds that day. We're going to have booths up. We're going to have everybody there. We're going to have everybody out. We have some great speakers lined up, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's great to see a lot of familiar names. I see Susie. Susie, it's good to see you back. Hope the family's growing and doing well. So, oh, look at see the face. All right, good to see you. And great to see everybody else. Dwight, I think we've spent all day together, so that's wonderful. But thanks, everybody. Thanks again to John. Please email John if you have any follow-up questions. He's always available. I don't know if he ever sleeps. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for everybody for joining us, and we will see you guys next time.
Have a great day, everybody. Be safe.